Hi, folks. My name is Lindsay Martinez. I am one of the hosts of our Conservation Relevancy community site, and I'm back here today to introduce you to another one of our pilot states. It's North Carolina. Joining me here today is a team from the North Carolina agency. We've got 4 folks here, and we'd love if you could introduce yourselves.
Okay, I'll go first. I'm Sarah Schweitzer, and I'm the Wildlife Diversity Program Coordinator for our North Carolina Wildlife Resources Commission.
I'll go next. I'm Fallon Owens. I'm our Extension Wildlife Biologist.
Go ahead, Kevin.
I'm Kevin Dockendorf, Fisheries Research Coordinator in the Inland Fisheries Division of the agency.
And I'm Chet Clark, Recruitment, Retention, and Reactivation Program Manager within the Wildlife Education Division.
Awesome. Thank you all so much for being here. It's great to meet you. So you're one of our pilot states, and just want to ask first and foremost, what's the gist of your project? What are you guys doing?
Okay, in a short nutshell, we are taking a couple of the barriers in the relevancy roadmap and piloting them through putting on 2 workshops for our agency. And these 2 workshops will address a couple of the topics. One is fulfilling the agency's mission, and the other is the power of diversity and inclusion. And I'll let one of the other folks elaborate on these workshops if you like.
I guess I can talk about the workshops. One is really meant to be focused on sort of our outreach staff and the components of reaching a broader, diverse audience, and understanding implicit bias and understanding that there's an active effort that needs to be taken to reach broader audiences, but that it's something that needs to be incorporated into all outreach efforts as just an aspect of outreach, as opposed to something that maybe one person in the agency focuses on, like a diversity person, something that we can all do every day whenever we're doing outreach efforts. Just an added component that we always need to be thinking about. And then the other workshop is more focused on internal culture, understanding how we interact with one another as co-workers and partners in our conservation efforts, and how to understand that the differences that we have among one another make us more strong and impactful in that work. So that's kind of, one workshop is focused externally, how we interact with the rest of the world, and the other workshop is focused internally, and trying to help us create a more diverse and inclusive internal work culture.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and we felt like these workshops would allow us to look at our agency and how our constituents relate with us and vice versa, but also how we function internally and understand our biases and function within our agency. We felt like that would be a good way to start this process. And then to help us achieve our next large goal, which is putting together a mentorship program. And so that's another part of it, to mentor new people into our agency and the natural resources profession. And we created a work group to lead that effort, and Kevin is the lead of that work group. So maybe Kevin, you want to give a little detail where we are right now?
Yeah, thanks, Sarah. Yeah, and thank you, Lindsay, for having us today. The mentoring aspect is part of a working group we have called Fostering the Next Generation of Conservation Professionals within our career. So, while we are working within the agency as into the now, into internal culture and welcoming and inclusive environment, we also need to know who the next generation is and their composition and what they're learning and what they're being trained, and on the two-way communication of how they see us as an agency of conservation professionals now. So we can address the barriers that do exist through the recruitment process whether that be hiring or the expectations of hiring, the application process. We do this by reaching out to other universities, perhaps those that are underrepresented communities, students that might not have a similar background as those that are currently in the career, also attending career fairs, and really just kind of, again, taking it from a perspective of we as mentors have a responsibility and understanding the welcoming and inclusive components of our career and where it is right now and moving it forward.
Awesome. So it sounds like you all are really focusing on the agency culture section of the roadmap.
Yeah.
Elaborate at all about how concretely you're using the roadmap as you go along?
Yeah, it meshes pretty well with a group that we started in our agency called the Partnership for Inclusion. And within that partnership, we had put together a strategic plan. And once the Relevancy Roadmap was out and published, we were able to compare our strategic plan to the Relevancy Roadmap. And it was really nice to see how well we overlapped with that roadmap. So we've been able to mesh the two together and work on agency culture and both of the strategies within that, and then some of the tasks and steps within those. So it really is working well for us to step down some of these portions of the Relevancy Roadmap in concert with our strategic plan.
Great, that's awesome to hear. Shifting gears a little bit, can you guys tell me a bit about something you're really proud of in your effort so far, a success or an accomplishment, and also be real and tell us something that's challenging.
Alan, you want to start with that?
Sorry, I was muted. Right now, I think what we have is a good solid plan to move forward, and support with that plan. We have a work plan that has everything outlined in terms of our objectives, our goals, how they align with our Partnership for Inclusion strategic plan and the Relevancy Roadmap. And so we have a document that we can use as a guide moving forward. But it's a slow process. With anything like this, there's friction and there's hesitancy. And right now, we're doing a lot of planning and preparing. So I think just having a solid plan to go forward is the product that I think we have to share at the moment. We are planning to have these workshops early next year. Hope you still see me. Can you guys hear me?
You hear you fine.
Okay. So we are planning these workshops early next year, and we have facilitators that are going to be like third-party facilitators that are going to be facilitating those workshops. So it's not our internal staff that are doing the teaching. But I think if I could share my frustration, it's just how slow the process is going, because we have to do a lot of work to justify it, especially when you're talking about concrete action. And that's the frustration. But I don't think that those challenges are insurmountable. It just, sometimes it's difficult to be patient. So if anybody wants to elaborate on that.
Yeah, I'd say we moved forward well with that work plan, so that we got that put together super well with a concerted effort to do that. So that was great. And then we moved forward to find our facilitators for the workshops. And so that process was fine. One of the facilitators we selected was not responding in a timely manner, and we had some glitches with that connection. So that was one difficulty we came across. And so we've moved to a second facilitator, and that now we're moving forward well. But of course, on top of all that is COVID-19, and that's set us back quite a bit, because we originally wanted to have these workshops in the summer, And then we couldn't do that in person. And then we had some roadblocks with COVID-19 concerns. So we were going to move them to fall, but then scheduling conflict. So again, then we moved it to early winter because within our agency, we tried to have our chiefs of each of the divisions select staff to participate. And each division has a different number of staff. So we try to have them represented by percentage of the staff in each division. And then of course, everybody's busy, especially during the fall, during hunting seasons and whatnot. So it became evident we'd move it to early January or February, whichever will work best with people's schedules. And we're still planning to have to do it virtually though. So some of these stumbling blocks we've come across, but things are moving a little bit slower than we wanted to. But, yeah.
Thank you for sharing that. And yeah, it's important for people to understand that.
And you might want to elaborate on that career fair where you were able to participate. That seemed to go super well.
Yeah, I think that's kind of, again, Lindsay, you mentioned about not to necessarily reinvent the wheel, so we don't have to really go in and find something new to present this. I think it's a matter of first, that we do have concerns about relevancy, and that this plan that was created in 2019 nationwide, but to have it really understood as to what it's meant across a staff of 650 people, that currently have a position within an agency and see their positions already as relevant. So there are some of those things that are like, well, what do you mean we're not relevant anymore, or determining that. So but as Sarah alluded to about the career fair and the things that we learned there, there's always opportunities for communication not to work the way we intended, and that we have an application process and everyone should know that, or active people that are actively searching for a job should know. We have all these shoulds going on as to that, but what really came to light was the really lack of awareness of how the application process works, how positions are posted, and especially if positions are internal only, at a career fair, that they're mostly external candidates. It's really a challenge to bring internal only positions to a career fair. But it has to be recognized as to why that is. The positions that are in North Carolina, internal or external, have to go through the NC online application portal. Components about see my resume. Well, a resume these days, they're great conversation starters, get to know who you are if you hand out a one-page document or something like that. But when it actually comes to the application process, what's expected is certainly beyond a resume. So, and even minimum expectations or qualifications compared to management preferences. So, while you might hit the minimum qualifications, there might be management preferences that are actually being looked at. So that's been very, very informative. And even from the working at what we call the three-legged stool, right? We always have to have some stabilization somewhere. And I think there is, over time, the generations that have replaced relatively slowly, but if we look at it as a big trend, universities, the professions, and the agencies typically have challenges with the communication process, and universities understanding what agency needs are, agencies understanding what universities are teaching, connections between professions and agencies, where professions are often significantly specialized. So the Wildlife Society, American Fisheries Society typically are specialized in those components, whereas, say, Association of Fish and Wildlife agencies have all sorts of careers within each of their agencies. So it's fisheries, enforcement, wildlife, administration, lands and water access, education. Those are all components of where our skill sets are needed to be diverse, needed to be cognizant of and cognitive of various disciplines, and above all, connection to the public and who our public are and who our constituents and beneficiaries are. So mentoring and seeing who's coming up in that training, we're not we want to be sure that we connect in appropriate ways, and we can't just um, rely upon what's worked in the past. Some of those things might work still, but there's also means to be adaptive to remain relevant.
Yeah, and another really good discussion that's come up with our chiefs and others is what is the agency mission and who is our constituency? And so I think that that's a good discussion within our agency, because depending on where you are within the agency, you may have a different point of view as to what that is. Although, it's in statute what creates our agency. And so maybe even that needs to be examined as we move forward into some of these new things happening in our state and other states as well.
Thank you. Appreciate you guys explaining. Just one last thing I want to ask is just quickly, if you have any bit of advice or suggestions for other folks implementing the relevancy roadmap, what would you tell them?
Well, I think working through it and then really asking yourself these hard questions about your agency and having good discussions with other staff in your agency, like which of these barriers do we face or do others face? And walking through those steps and see which ones may apply to your agency. And then it really helped us to have our group develop our strategic plan, and we honed in on 3 major objectives or goals to achieve. And we also realized that timeline is quite long. You can't do this overnight. I think the patience factor is another one that's really important.
Yeah, I support that, and also the advice that I'm beginning to give myself, and what I'd encourage others to consider is the management of expectations, and that the patience factor is a big one, but at the same time, we are making progress, even by the connections that we're making together in this smaller group of the Partnership for Inclusion, the working groups that are occurring there, the small steps of the people that will join and why they join. Sometimes it's a join, other times it's a verbal join, but I think it's important to manage the expectations that this is long, arduous work, because we are attempting to change minds and culture that has been instilled for generations. So it's something, again, to care and connect with those, and learn about each other's why. Who are you? And learn about each other's purpose, and then connect that purpose to a broader mission that we are collective and stronger in unison than being different, and that we're not in unison. So I think managing those expectations, that it takes time, and any forward progress is a step in the right direction. And yeah, I think there's even the zeptosecond now is the smallest time component. So I think you start figuring out that a relevancy baby step is very relatively small forward.
Gotcha. Well, thank you for sharing that advice, and I hope that that'll be helpful to folks, and that learning about all your work will inspire them and have them ask some questions and want to keep updated with you. And thank you so much again for coming on today and telling us a bit about your project, and we'll be really excited to get updates and see how you guys continue forward.
Thank you, Lindsay.
Thank you, Lindsay. Take care.
Thank you.